Welcome to another episode of the Next Generation podcast. Today, I have Meredith Hallwig on with me, and I know I say this every single week, guys, but I'm so excited for this conversation. Meredith got on here, and her energy is just radiating through the computer right now, and so I am ecstatic for this conversation, guys. We're going to be talking all things Meredith's story and just a little bit of her background and what she's doing right now in agriculture, but then also just getting into agriculture and all the things like that. Meredith loves talking about this, and so I'm not going to talk too much about you and who you are and all of those things. I will let you just take it away, Meredith. Share who you are, what you do, and all the things.
Hey, thank you, Lauren. I am super excited to be on here. So I'll kind of start with where I'm at right now. So currently, I am a grad student in the Ag and Applied Economics department at the University of Wyoming, focusing on mainly diversification on ranches. And then I have a couple other projects sprinkled in, but that's my huge one just because I love giving back to the community, and I felt like that would be my best, mode of communication there. And then I serve on the Board of Agriculture for the state of Wyoming. I was appointed by the governor in April, and I absolutely love it. I represent the Southeast region, and I'm actually the youngest member, which is kind of crazy. And then I guess just how I got started. So I was born in California, so just outside of LA, and then moved to Colorado when I was about 10. And that's kind of where everything started for me. And so when we moved, I was kind of surrounded by a lot of ag properties, but not really in the ag community per se. Throughout, I guess, high school, I was super involved in club sports and being an athlete. And I didn't ever think that being in the ag community was ever anything that I could achieve or anything I can accomplish. So I went out with an injury my junior year, which led me to get actually my foot in the door in ag, so which is so crazy. But I started volunteering on a highland ranch outside of Brighton, Colorado in Loch Buoy. And I was there every single weekend. I was helping show their cattle. I was fixing fence for them. I was just even mucking stalls just because I wanted to learn so much about the industry, which then led me to going against my school board to allow me to be an FFA at a different high school. So my high school didn't have FFA at all. We didn't even have a local 4-H club where I was. And I went to my principal at the time, and she was like, well, ag isn't needed. Ag isn't important. So why would you want to do that? You should just go do welding like the other kids do at our little technical high school. And I said, no, that's not for me. So I went to our school board and I said, how can I get involved in FFA? I know that there's these chapters. I want to get involved with them. I want to go and just learn as much as I could about agriculture. And I went there, and I fought for, I want to say, at least 2 months just to get involved. And they wouldn't let me go to the one that was about 20 minutes from my house. They enrolled me in the school that was about 45 minutes from my house. So each day it was wake up, go to my first high school, then drive the 45 minutes to attend my other high school just to learn about ag. And then at the time, I started getting involved in the 4-H club that was in that area just because it was easy. Right after school, you go to 4-H, and then you can still be involved with all your FFA friends and things like that. So I ended up having a beef cow. His name was Kip. He was my favorite cow in the world. He was a Highland, and he was the best. He showed the best. He was just so loving. And then I had a dairy cow that I leased, which was really nice. Our programs allowed that. It was only $15 for the year. Really got me involved in ag. And then where I kept my beef cow, I also showed chickens there, and they got me involved with sheep. And then I met a gal in my FFA chapter that had pigs, and I said, oh my God, I want to show a pig. Like, why not, just go all out. And so my senior year, I literally showed everything at the county fair. I just went all in. And it was super fun. And my pig, his name is Gronkowski, best pig ever. And just my first year of showing livestock, I got to go to so many jackpots because of this family that allowed me to get into the industry. And I showed this pig, like this poor pig, he got so much burnout by the end of the year, but me and him were tight. And it was really cool because I got reserve showmanship champion at our county fair after my first year showing. So that was like super cool. And then I started going to National Western Stock Show with my Highlands. So it was first Kip, that steer. And then I absolutely fell in love with this heifer that was one of my friends. And her name was Mia. And she was the silver cow that just like took my dreams where they wanted to go. And I ended up winning multiple awards with her. And she was just amazing. And the family that allowed me to show her were great. I mean, they made me one of their own, and they seriously just took me under their wing, taught me everything it was about showing livestock, showing everything, and actually how to get more involved in the ag community. So I give all my gratitude to my Highland cattle people just because they always were so welcoming. They allowed me to go to every single show I wanted to, and they always they treated me like I was one of their own. I mean, I never felt like I was out of the ordinary just because I wasn't born on a ranch or anything. They didn't treat me like I wasn't. So that was just a great community. And then it led me to go to South Dakota State my freshman year of college. And there I started with animal science because, you know, every little girl's dream is I want to be a vet student. I want to go to vet school. Not for me. Definitely not for me. And so I started there and I got involved with a couple of different organizations and did like Block and Bridle, and Little International was huge at South Dakota State. I didn't get as involved with that just because I was like, oh, you know what? I showed and I got my time and in high school. But and I love seeing my friends prosper in that, and I still love seeing them prosper there. But I ultimately met my husband there. And then he had a job that was going to put him in Utah. And so I had the decision of, do I follow him or do I just stay in Brookings, South Dakota and just do my own thing? And so I ultimately just chose to go back to Wyoming. I was on the fence like my freshman year of Colorado State or Wyoming, and Wyoming just spoke to me more. So I transferred to Wyoming, where it just opened me up to a world of possibilities. My first year there, I started getting involved with our Collegiate Cattle Association, and then our Farm Bureau, and a couple other like little organizations around campus. But Collegiate Cattle Association really changed, I guess, my whole perspective of things. So it really taught me everything I wanted to know about the cattle industry, and I guess how to actually like tend to a herd or start my own herd and things like that. To where I became the president the following year, just because I was just so involved with it. And I absolutely loved it. And then it got me really involved with our local stock growers, which, oh my gosh, our stock growers is amazing. We have a young producers assembly, which I now am a part of, and I'm the Region 2 vice president of, and I love that group. It's people that are 40 years or younger that just are getting started in like the cattle industry and kind of have a backbone there, which I absolutely love. And then our stock growers is super fond of the younger generation coming in and learning more about the Western industry, the cattle industry, and different things like that, which is just so impactful as not necessarily a college student coming in, you know, because it's so scary going into that world alone. But knowing that you have this huge organization to like help support you in any endeavor you have. I'm even going to Washington, D.C. for them in, I guess, next September to go and advocate on the Hill about the agricultural industry and the cattle industry, just because it's an industry worth fighting for that I don't think many people understand. And I absolutely love it. And then Farm Bureau was a great one to get involved with as well, just because it taught me a lot of the policy side of things. Because, I mean, gosh, growing up in Colorado, there are so many things that are negatively impacting the agricultural community there. And just to be the change there is just something impactful. I mean, I wasn't born into ag, and I guess that kind of gives me a leg down in some circumstances, but in the policy sector, a leg up, because I can relate to both people that are making policies that oh my gosh, I've never stepped foot on a farm or a ranch. But I can also bring it in and say, well, yeah, you haven't stepped foot. And I started where I did not grow up on a farm or a ranch. And here's what led me to it. And it kind of opens their mind when I go and talk about policy, because knowing that they have something to relate with someone on is just going to make that much of a difference when you go and talk politics. And then it kind of just, that was like all through undergrad. And then my senior year, I got a call from the governor, in, I want to say the end of February. And he said, hey, Meredith, how's it going? And I was like, hey, Governor Gordon, how are you? And he was like, I have gotten a couple of recommendations for you to be on our Board of Agriculture. And he's like, I'd love to appoint you to it if you'd be up for it. And I was like, oh my God, like, no way am I getting this call right now. And I was actually in the middle of a farm and ranch management class. And it seriously like pops up on my phone and it says Governor Gordon. And I'm like, probably should take this, So stepping into the hallway, and like, I think the whole hallway could hear my whole conversation. I'm like, oh my God, hey, how's it going? And it, like the most like minute details, so it's, hey, would you like to be appointed? It's a 4-year term. If yes, like I'll have my secretary contact you. And I was like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so that just really like took off for me. And it's really neat because now I help get to be the change in Wyoming and help a lot of farmers and ranchers across the state in that role. And I absolutely love it, but it's taken me down so many different avenues. And that's a little bit about my story. So.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That is just a roller coaster of a story, but then also so inspiring. Like going from living outside of LA to near Brighton, Colorado, which is kind of rural, but not really. Like it's not Denver, but it's a suburb of Denver pretty much. Like if we're being real, at least now it is. Maybe not when you were growing up, but it definitely is now. Like that's where we stay when we go to the National Western and show. We go stay in Brighton. And it's crazy going from that to now like getting calls from the governor and being like, hey, as an undergraduate student. And like it is crazy that your life went from like 0 to 100 so quickly, but at the same time, it wasn't quick. It was a very intentional process that you took of, hey, I love this. I want to get involved. I see a future here. I want to be the change. And like, I'm stepping into these rooms and with so much purpose that I don't necessarily like, you probably didn't one day like sit down and be like, I want to be on the Board of Agriculture for the state of Wyoming. Like you probably didn't sit down and do that. And I know I'm the same way that like typically the things that come into my life, I don't sit down and like they're a goal and like I'm reaching for them. I just like start doing the do. And then all of a sudden you're getting calls from the governor and then like, hey, like things are happening, or you're getting involved in like different organizations and stuff like that. And things just start falling into place. Can you talk about just like that process and journey of just like putting yourself out there, doing it scared, and just like going out of your way to be involved in all of the different organizations as someone who didn't grow up in ag?
Oh yeah, 100%. I guess starting at South Dakota State, I'll just start there because that kind of like was the switch for me, I'll say. So I was involved in a sorority, which a lot of people look down on. But I was in Sigma Alpha, which if anyone knows Sigma Alpha, they know that South Dakota State has a really great chapter and a really good group of girls. And it's a professional agricultural sorority. So I immediately went in there and I was like, well, like I don't think that I have any responsibility in being here because everyone else there was either growing up on a farm or their parents owned so-and-so or so-and-so knew this person and this is why I got here and things like that. And being in that sorority was really eye-opening from the agricultural perspective because they always involved us in the industry, whether that was our huge career fairs on college or like on campus to even just like letting us go in small interviews and do that same process. That was really impactful because it taught me how to be professional in the industry. And then I got involved with Block and Bridle, which is kind of like a little show, like a show club that they have on campus. And I was like, you know what? I showed some beef cows and I showed a pig, so I can be here, you know? But little did I know that it was going to be so scary because everyone's talking genetics. It was the first time I ever heard about genetics. And me having my little highlands did not even compare to the types of people I would meet. I guess like one of my good friends, her name's Courtney Schaff, and they have Schaff Angus Valley, and they sold a bull to a rapper and like things like that, like $1 million bull. And I was like, whoa, wow, like that's a pretty big number. I would never get that for my cows. That's always what I thought. And it was kind of cool because I got to surround myself with people that I never thought I would be in the same room with, you know? And that was just a real eye opener there. And then transferring to Wyoming, it was me not knowing a single person, any of my classes, anywhere on campus really. So I just kind of took it with a grain of salt, and I went out there and learned. And the first year I really just focused on academics. And in my classes, there's a class called Farm and Ranch Management, and it just teaches you how to actually take over a ranch or start your own ranch. And that class, oh my gosh, did it change me for the better. It seriously got me so involved with the economic side of things that like it just changed my mind, because growing up, I guess I always knew that ag was small in the US, you know, but you didn't really see that until you started learning about that. And so I learned quickly that ag was the 2% of the population in the whole US, you know, and taking that class, I was like, you know what? I could be the change for farmers and ranchers. I could teach them about their books. I could teach them about how to own their operation and actually how to be profitable on those ranches. And that class was kind of my turning point, because I could teach people things, you know, that I was learning in a classroom that farmers and ranchers usually don't have the time to take. And it got me involved with Ranching for Profit, which is such a great group in Wyoming, and it travels kind of along the West. And it's a group that really teaches you how to break down your ranch operations and then apply that to your ranch so that you can actually make that difference and actually start seeing profits so that you're not going downhill. And that really just was a turning point for me. And then I went to my first Collegiate Cattle Association meeting. And I just remember I sat in the front and didn't know a single soul. And I was just like, hey, like smiling at everybody that walked in, because like kill them with kindness, you know? But I was in there. I'm like a pretty outgoing person, so I got to know the people around me pretty well. And I remember like the first question they asked us in that group was, what do you guys want to learn? What do you guys want to talk about? And me, I'm like, everything, please teach me it all. Okay. But everyone around me was like saying like, oh, I want to learn the financial side. I want to learn about cow-calf operations. I want to learn about seed stock. And the one thing I learned from Block and Bridle was seed stock was where it was at, you know, or the club calf industry. And I said, oh, I want to learn about club calves. And they just looked at me and kind of started laughing, because like Wyoming, I mean, it's a huge cow-calf state. Like there is not a whole lot of show calves. And if it is, like they are winning like everything, you know, in the state, because there's so few. But huge cow-calf operations and huge yearling operations too. But me coming in from this little background that I had, and oh, I want to learn about club calves, you know, like, they just kind of laughed at me. They wrote it on the board anyways, only got one vote, and it was me. So that was like my first turning point in, I guess, the cattle industry, because gosh, I mean, I wanted to learn about that since I was little, you know. But I started doing that, and then I attended National Western and volunteered at National Western quite a bit. just because I wanted to learn like, oh, the show industry, like this is a huge scale of show industry compared to my little county fairs or me with my Highlands. I mean, we took our Highlands to the National Western and it was a surreal experience, you know. But volunteering there actually got let you know the exhibitors and know what they went through throughout the year and different things like that. And it ultimately led me to get an internship there. I want to say 2 years after I first started volunteering. And oh my gosh, that was a fun internship. It was super professional. It was super great to get to know my little group of livestock interns. And we got to lead shows. We got to do a whole slew of things that really just took off for me. But National Western is what made me fall in love with bison, which a lot of people would be like, bison? You're like, why? But gosh, the bison industry was also so welcoming and so enjoyable. But I wanted to learn about the nation's like mammal. It was just so neat because I remember I was at my first auction sitting in the front row and I see this bison like huffing and puffing out of there. And I was like, oh my God, like there is nothing that this fence is going to do for me if they go wild. But gosh, just seeing that huge of an animal, just so majestic and graceful. I fell in love with it. And since then I wanted to get involved in bison and learn more about them. And I started going to local events for that. And that was also a new thing for me because, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm just a girl that loves bison from an auction I saw, you know, going to these different events and learning about them. And I think going to an event and wanting to learn about something is way different than going to an event and just like attending it, you know. I came with a passion to these events. And I guess that's what really like let me fit in with the crowd, I guess you could say, but made me feel more comfortable because people were willing to teach me. And as long as I came in with an open mindset, people were so willing to tell me everything they need to know about every single thing going on, you know. But I ultimately got a internship with the National Bison Association, and it was about a year long. And I did an economic development impact kind of thing there, and kind of a startup branch, what that might look like. And then I also helped lead a couple of events at the National Western this past year, which was super fun because I mean, I didn't think I'd ever get in that role that big, you know. But I'm on the microphone at the auction, or I'm presenting data at their conferences too. So it was super impactful and super life-changing to be that involved in an industry that they constantly wanted to learn more from me, you know. And then this upcoming January, I'll be going back to the National Western and presenting another poster for them and a little bit of research I've been doing for them through grad school. But I mean, as long as I've been willing to learn, I haven't seen a huge change like going to something that's scary, you know, because my first conversations, like people aren't as scary as like everyone thinks they are. Like a lot of people talk about RBFs and I'm like, you know, if you just smile at someone, usually you get a smile back. But I went to a lot of a lot of things that I thought were scary at the time. But looking back, I was like, oh my gosh, like, why were you so scared of that? Or why was that so intimidating to you, you know? But really just going there to learn and like just stating, like, I guess, what your interests are. So many people are so receptive to that. So many people are interested in talking to you because of that. So I guess that's my little advice. Sorry, that was just like a whole long ramble, but
No, that was perfect. And I think like what you ended on is so, so important. And that's what I was going to ask based off of that is like just the openness and willingness to learn, I think is the biggest thing in this industry, and willingness to look stupid or feel stupid in a situation. Like let go of that fear, because if you don't ask the questions, like I like to ask questions because I'm like, I got taught this really young, like in 4-H and stuff, that like ask the question because there's probably like if you have the question, someone else in the audience probably has the question too. And so be the person that asks. And there truly is no stupid question, because even if someone understands, like you're in a class and someone grew up in a cow-calf operation and it's a cow-calf operating class, like they're obviously going to have a basic understanding and knowledge, but you might have people in there that didn't grow up in ag like you, Meredith, or they grew up in a like feeder situation, like they grew up on a feedlot or something, and so they also don't understand this basic knowledge or something like that that would quote unquote seem basic to people. And so it's just your willingness to ask questions and be involved, because my understanding and experience in agriculture is people want to share. People want to share their stories. They want to share about their operations. If you're at the National Western, people want you to walk up to them and learn about their breeds that maybe don't get recognized as often, like the Highlands or like the bison breeds and like things like that, that people really want you to want to learn. And so if you walk up with a smile and just a willingness and an openness, that you don't have any preconceptions or anything like that, like you're truly just going up there because you're like, hey, this is cool, I want to learn about this.
Right.
People are going to teach you. Like agriculture is very, very welcoming. And I think that is a turn that we've taken in the past like 10 or 15 years, is becoming very welcoming. And understanding that if we're not sharing our story, someone else is going to share it for us. And so people have started to be more open to sharing about their operations or sharing about why they do certain things, and stuff like that too.
I fully agree. I mean, the sharing story aspect, I mean, it was funny because at our recent stock growers event, a lot of people were like, well, I want to share my story, but I don't know how to, or there's no one to share it to because this is just like pretty average day-to-day things, you know? But I said, you know, that phone you have that's probably an iPhone, do you have Instagram? Do you have Facebook? And they said, well, yeah, like, what do you mean? And I was like, you know how many people are want to learn about that? I mean, you know how many people want to learn how you saddle your horse even, or how your cow chews cud? Like it's so like minute, but so many people don't know about that in the industry, you know, and so many people are eager to learn, and they don't necessarily always want to learn from the negative news sources that are going out there. So if you're not going to share that information, then like what information is that person going to get? I mean, when we have so many negative news sources coming out. So
Yeah, absolutely. Can you speak to like if there's any like young college students, young graduate students that are looking at agriculture, or maybe just young people in general that are looking at agriculture and they're like, I don't know where my place is. I want to have a place in agriculture. Maybe I grew up in ag, maybe I didn't. But I want to find my place in agriculture. You have found an amazing place in agriculture and had such an impact over just your recent years of involvement and stuff like that. Can you speak to kind of those people and just your advice there of truly like finding your place to get involved?
right. Yes. I think one of the biggest things like to get involved, I guess, is just going to those county organizations, because that's where I kind of started, was either a club organization on campus that I maybe thought, oh, this isn't for me, but going anyways to learn. And then these county organizations, I want to say like our Albany County Cattle Women, it's like a $20 membership, and you're a member, and it's a bunch of women that just want to teach you. And it's not even like, let me downgrade you the whole time. It's oh, well, let me hear about your background. Where'd you grow up? And you know, my husband and I have this ranch if you ever want to come out and see it. And I think that's really impactful for the younger generation specifically, because a lot of these, I like to like quote unquote older generation, but not really per se. But they are so willing to teach you. And I know that there's more organizations than just cattle women, but just going up to someone, or my favorite conversations are always at the beef counter or always at the grocery store, because you can talk to so many people that maybe they're just trying to learn about agriculture, you know, but you can just have that one-on-one conversation. But if you grew up on a ranch, I mean, you have the same, I guess, playing field as someone that didn't right now. And so it's really nice because everyone can learn. And that's my biggest takeaway, is everyone can learn. I mean, one of my really good friends, me and her went to a stock growers event, and she's like, Meredith, I know nobody. Like my parents, like they both ranch, they both have a cow calf operation, and I know absolutely nobody. And I was like, oh, let's go. Like, let's just go meet people. And so I just seriously sat down at so many random tables just to get to know people, you know? And I met I met someone from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, that runs a beef stick company, and that's where they get most of their money from. Someone from Ten Sleep, Wyoming, and they just have a huge cowpoke like operation, and it is so fun. But so many of them, every time you sit down, they'll just invite you to the table too. And so that's just something that's really nice that this younger generation can take advantage of. Is there's always a seat at the table for you, and there's always someone that's going to invite you to that table, especially in the ag industry. So just taking full advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said about like taking advantage of those opportunities, because I feel like so often we let our own egos, or our own fears, or our own like just we get stuck in our own head about a million different things. And even if you grew up in agriculture, there are so many different aspects about agriculture that you can learn about. Like I grew up on a cow calf operation. I know quite a bit about the other sectors of like the cattle industry, from when they leave our house at the sale barn to when they get processed at a processing plant. But I wasn't a part of those. I didn't do the day to day on those operations. And so for me, I am ignorant sometimes to the struggles or other aspects of different sectors, even just within the beef industry. That's
Mhm.
not even agriculture as a whole. If you ask me about turkey or chicken operations, I'd be like, nope, I might as well be a person from downtown LA in those situations, because I know so little. And it's just letting go of the aspect that like it's okay to not know about things. It's okay to walk up and feel like you're asking stupid questions, or just things like that. And it's also like, don't let one bad conversation that you maybe had with someone get you down either. Like there are people out there that want to help you and want to invite you to their ranches, want to share about their operations, want to share about their highs and lows and hear about your story and engage in conversation and stuff like that. And so whether it's starting in your 4-H chapters or your FFAs or your collegiate cattlewomen's or your farm bureaus or your USDA, or like all of these things that we have nationally, just walk into an extension office
Right.
and be like, hey, I want to learn about agriculture. I know nothing. I just want to learn. And I guarantee you, every single one of those extension agents are going to pop up and be like, oh, hello, hi, how can we help you? Here are all of these brochures. Here's all of these resources and information. And you're going to go home with a 3-ring binder full of things, because these organizations are there for that reason. Like that's the whole reason we have like Farm Bureau and USDA and like these extension organizations and things like that, is to help already established farmers and ranchers, and then really help establish new farmers and ranchers.
Right. No, I fully agree with that. I mean,
Yeah.
working with Extension, I worked with them this past summer, and it was always about advocating. And it always taught me like every interaction you have, make sure one this person's ever had, because it's always so daunting learning something new. I mean, gosh, I did a Wyoming Women in Ag conference, and this last year, I took a bunch of women to 2 meat processing facilities, and it was people that grew up on cattle operations and different things like that. But as soon as we got into those meat lockers, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen this. I want to learn all about this," because you always see the operation, but you never see it all the way through. I feel like, unless you have a full like end to end operation. But just teaching people that many things is just, I think it's so awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear a little bit more about your journey, just like what we kind of talked about earlier, of like you don't really set these goals. You just start doing the do, and then all of a sudden like these things start falling into place, or like, and then like your goals change and like all of that type of thing. Can you just talk a little bit about, as like a person that's so heavily involved in agriculture, continuing to strive for more but not really knowing what that next step is, and just that journey?
Yeah. Nothing has been planned. I will say that. The only thing that was planned was, I'm going to finish my education and I'm going to go look for a job, which I still haven't looked at yet. But yeah, so none of these goals were really ever set. It was always, hey, Meredith, you want to get involved in this? And I said, yeah, sure, let's do it. I first started out with that Collegiate Cattlemen's Association president role. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not built for this. But I had actually the previous officer team reach out to me and say, you know what, I think you'd be a good fit for this role. And I think you'd be an advocate in this role. And let's try your hand in it. But just down the line, I mean, I always strive to do better. And I always strive. My parents always taught me, like, leave something better than you found it. And I always take that into my day-to-day lives too, because if I meet somebody and, or even I'm just involved in an organization, I always want to make it better. There's always some change that could happen. And, that's always just kind of been my mindset is, what can we bring to the table? What can be different? Or how can we reach a different audience? And over that time, I guess I've been noticed a lot more, which sounds really weird, but a lot of more people have noticed me. And I guess like my biggest one was the vice president of Wyoming Stock Growers, Jim Magagna. He was like, hey, Meredith, like, you'd be really great in this role. Have you ever thought about it? And I was like, what? Excuse me? I didn't even know this role existed. But just taking, I would say, again, full advantage of someone seeing what you do great in and actually saying, you know what, let me take a chance in it. And for me, it's being outgoing, being a leader, and being great at time management. And a lot of people have seen that in my roles and have always pushed me to do better. And surrounding yourself with those people that always push you to do better will always make you just rise to that next level, or surrounding yourself by people you want to learn from too. That one is one of my biggest things. I mean, one of my good friends, her name's Nikki. She's involved in the carbon market industry. And that right now is a little touch and go with the cattle industry, but I want to learn. I mean, there's nothing that learning will do to like damper anything about you. And just over time, I mean, I just received an award for Cowgirl 30 Under 30, which I seriously never thought in like my wildest dreams I would ever get. Especially like this young too. But it took a lot of friends that pushed me. And I have a really good support system at home with my husband and with my parents too, that just always push me to that next level. And just finding your crowd of people that will always push you. I mean, there's nothing that can stop you from what you can achieve. I'll be honest, like nothing that can hold you back.
I couldn't relate to that more. And I feel like that is just like something that everyone, no matter what walk of life you're in, needs to hear of, like really sitting down and evaluating who are you surrounding yourself with? Like, who are you choosing that gets a seat at your table? Because there's a limited number of seats that you are able to have at your table at a time. And you know what? Some of those seats are going to be revolving. Some of those seats are going to be pretty permanent seats. Like your husband, probably always going to have a seat at your table. Like that was going to be pretty permanent seat. But it's one of those things that's like, who are you spending the most time with? Who are you choosing to surround yourself with? Who's pouring into you? Who are you pouring into? Like, how are all of these transactions that happen in your life, where are you spending your most time? And for me personally, in college, I heard a quote from someone. I don't remember who it was from. It was probably Ed Milet or someone like that. It was like, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Mm-hmm.
And that absolutely changed the way that I viewed my friendships and relationships, that like, not all of them have to be transactional by no means, but it's still one of those things that's like, are you choosing to surround yourself with people who are achieving? Are you choosing to surround yourself with people who are pushing to the next level in their own personal lives and therefore pushing you as an individual too? Are you choosing to surround yourself with a bunch of bums? Because you know what? If you are, then you might be a bum too. Sorry, y'all. little harsh, but it's one of those things that's like, if you want a life that looks like this, you have to start surrounding yourself with people that look like that, have achieved that, are trying to achieve that, or are going to at least push you to achieve that and not kind of hold you back. You also talked about like the aspect of time management and things like that. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Being involved in a trillion things and like wanting to have a seat at all of these different tables, but still you're a graduate student and still like have all of these other things, a husband, family, all of the things. Can you just talk about that a little bit, and then anything else there?
Yeah. So the time management portion, I guess it's taken a little bit of time to actually figure it out, but it does with anybody's life. And I will say that your time is going to change depending on what's going on in your life, too. Right now, I am doing a little bit of research, but not per se like my whole head, my whole body is diving into this research quite yet. My husband and I are doing well. He started a new job. Which has allowed him to have a lot more free time, and also just spend a lot more time either doing house renovations or things like that, which has taken a lot off of my plate personally. And myself, I mean, I always have to have a system, and I am that weird person. It's always got to be planned out. And if things aren't planned out, then it just kind of sends me for a little bit of a joyride, but I'm a planner. I always have to have things planned. And I am also a deadline person. So if, let's say, this club or this organization needs something done by this time, I'm on it. Like it'll be done at least 2 weeks prior to the deadline, because it's like you have to set priorities for yourself, and you also have to set priorities for other people too, because if you're in this season of wanting to grow and wanting to change, which the one that I'm in right now is that, you have to be honest with your other friends too, because it's hard to have friends just like seats at the table. It's hard to have friends that don't realize how busy you are, or it's hard to be with a lot of people that are just either not doing a whole lot, like you previously stated, or ones that just don't like to see you thrive. And I've gone through both in the last year, and it's super hard to disconnect from that. Super hard. Hardest thing probably I've ever done. But the time management portion, it's led me to be a better person per se, because it allows me to have time to designate towards these different groups and organizations, and as well as those different tasks that I'm assigned. And then spending time with my family and spending time with my animals and my husband. And then also still focusing on school too. It first comes, I'm a student, but I've had really great connections in that sense, because my school life, they all understand what I'm going through. They understand that I'm a person that loves to get things done. And they allow me to do that. They allow me to go at least like a month in advance of what I'm supposed to be doing, just so I can stay on track personally. But just building relationships in that aspect too. And also knowing when to give things up is another hard thing too, because I'm always like, oh, I can do this. I have a hard time at saying no. Horribly hard time at saying no. And I'm always like, oh yeah, sign me up for that. I can do this event, but in reality, you can't do it all. You can't juggle everything. And you have to figure out what things actually fit in your schedule, what things actually you can achieve and do them well. And that's kind of the realization I've had in the last year too, because I mean, gosh, I was like, yeah, I'll do this club, I'll do this organization, I'll go to these 5 events. And I was like, you know what? I'm not being my best self for these people. And that's not fair to them either. So just aligning yourselves with those too. But yeah.
Yeah, what you said about like just figuring out kind of where your priorities are, I feel like is so important. Again, no matter what season of life you're in, whether you're a college student that wants to start getting involved in agriculture and these organizations and things like that, or whether you're a like full-time entrepreneur and you're running a ranch and like doing all of these things, like that is so important to think about, and like be really honest with yourself of like, is this serving me, my future, my family? am I finding joy from this? Like all of these things, like just, you have to be honest with yourself, and saying no is really hard, especially when you have like a peer that's involved in it, or someone recommended you for a board or like XYZ, and you're like, I really don't want to disappoint these people, but like I know that, like, for me personally, I have to be honest that if I do this, I'm not going to do it well,
Mhm.
and that's not going to serve anyone in the grand scheme of things. Like, it's not going to represent me well, but then it's also, I'm not giving my best self to this organization that needs someone who
Yes.
can give all of themselves or their best version of them to them. And honestly, if you have me, you're going to get the scraps. And that's, no one deserves that. Absolutely no one deserves that. And so it's just being really honest with yourself, which is hard. It's really hard. Can you talk a little bit about like just that aspect, is like as you continue to grow and as you continue to just go down this path in life, the hard aspects of it and the parts that maybe aren't so glamorous and aren't so easy. And you don't necessarily want to put them on a plaque on your wall, but they're also part of the journey.
Yeah, I'll be open and honest. I mean, I lost a lot of friends this last year. And that was, I think, the hardest part is being at your like feeling like you're at your lowest when everyone else thinks, "Oh my God, she's at the top tier. She's getting this, this, and this," but you're feeling so low, you know. And it still just relates back to that table. And I realized this past year, my table was not full of people that were willing to either like reach out to me in times that I really needed them, or I was busy and they didn't like that I couldn't give all of my time to them. And finding those friends that actually appreciate you for you was something that really I needed to find this year in order to keep growing. And stepping into grad school, I mean, I created a friend that through undergrad, me and her were just back and forth, like horribly got along. Just come to find out we were so similar. And there's so many things that we could relate to. And now having her as such a close friend really just changed my mindset, because I always thought, oh, you know what? Like, we're never going to see eye to eye. It's never going to happen. But just being open and honest to that relationship too, and saying, you know what? Let me take a chance on someone that I maybe shot down a while ago, that really has been a friendship for me that has blossomed and has made me a better person, and has really just opened my eyes and has allowed me to be a good friend back. Um, it's also just like being in that low part of things, or this sounds bad, but achieving so much in a year, it really just like shows up. It shows up, and it's like you see how many people now negatively talk about you because of where you're at. And I always, it's so funny because I saw a quote that it was like, um, you never, like, if you're in a position of power, or if you're in a position that's higher, you're never going to talk low about somebody else, or you're never going to like compare to yourself to somebody else. And I always thought about that because I was like, gosh, I have nothing negative to say about me. I thought me and them were on good terms. And now I just hear they are like horribly talking about me. But it also like your season of life too. I mean, I remember a time where I would see people striving, and I always thought, oh gosh, like they're getting another award, or they're getting another title, and that little bit of jealousy. But now being in that position of getting things and doing better for yourself, and seeing the people that kind of hung back and are negatively talking about you, it's gonna happen, and it's probably gonna happen often. um, I've realized that quite a bit, where you feel like you're just walking on eggshells quite a bit, but it's always like it's always someone that wants to take you down negatively, and it's never someone that wants to build you up. And so I always mentally think about that too, and it's always, how can I maybe even like fix that relationship, or how can I talk to them, make sure that relationship's good. But um, just being in a low season of your life when it seems like you're achieving everything was something super hard this past year. So
Yeah, it's a really hard spot to be in. And when you feel like life is in theory or on paper going so well, but
mhm,
then you're in the background, like I am barely keeping my head above water over
right.
here. Like I am losing friends. I am like losing myself. I am like, and for me personally, it was like I was putting, when I was like achieving and doing all the things and still am, I realized how much weight I was putting in my friendships.
Yeah.
And it is great to have those friends that are there for you and those people that like you can put a lot in. But at the same time, I was putting so much weight on those friendships and like worth in myself on those friendships that it was like, I couldn't keep doing that.
Yes.
And it was a harsh reality to come to. It was a harsh reality to sit down and have to like actually kind of like, I personally am a person like I have to write it through. I have to like go through my thought process. I have to go through my list. That's the way my brain works. But like the process of sitting down and being like, are these friendships serving me? Are these people that I want at my table? And slowly starting to step away from those friendships
Yes.
with some intention there of like, there were a lot of really hard conversations that had to be had that like, hey, we're always going to be friends. I will always be your cheerleader. I love you dearly, but in this season of life, I just don't have the time to be in this like be going out every night or like be doing XYZ or like things like that. Like that's just not where my priorities are right now.
Yes.
And having those conversations or just like slowly stepping away are really, really hard situations to be in as you continue to grow and strive and achieve. And as someone like that, just you have such an amazing voice in agriculture as someone who didn't grow up in ag and just seeing your journey and everything has been so inspirational and just I absolutely love it. I do have one more dying question. I would love to talk a little bit about policy and just like your experience there as an advocate advocating for agriculture, like whether it be on Capitol Hill in Washington DC or whether it just be at the state level or things like that. I would love to talk about that and just speak to other agriculturalists out there that like really pushing them like, hey, like you have a voice, get involved, and what that kind of looks like. Because I feel like a lot of agriculturists are like, they hear like, hey, go lobby and go get involved on Capitol Hill, but then they're like, what do you mean? Like I go stand outside with a picket or like what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, so my first time, I'll talk about Capitol Hill experience first because oh my gosh, I loved Capitol Hill. Okay. So my first time there, I was actually advocating for a hunting group, and then slowly but surely over my time was with Farm Bureau and things like that, and it was all for Colorado. So I went for Safari Club International, and I also went for Farm Bureau, and I was speaking to representatives and senators from just about every state in our region. And then we also spoke to a couple of state and represent our states senators, and then also representatives that were from the eastern side of the U.S. And sorry, I'm not sure if like a lot of people in the ag industry realize this, but the East and the West do not necessarily cross. And the Midwest is that fine line in between them. But especially in policy, because the East gets rain, quite a bit of it. The West, we've been in droughts for months, and
Mm-hmm.
good luck seeing that rain, you know? But the ag is so much different too. And explaining that on Capitol Hill is something that seriously needs to happen, even in your state and local regions. I mean, just breaking down Colorado specifically, the eastern side usually is pretty dry. And then you get northern or west or more west in Colorado, and you get a little bit more wet. But the crops and the type of things you're allowed to grow in those certain areas are a lot different. And a lot of policymakers do not get that. Do not get it at all. I mean, I remember my favorite question when I went to Capitol Hill for the first time. It was back when wolves were on the ballot for Colorado, and I I was there, and I said, you know what, this is going to be horrible for our farmers and ranchers, and it's going to be horrible for the states surrounding it. And their first comment was, I thought wolves were good. I thought they were a part of the ecosystem. I thought they were a part of the food chain. And I seriously just took me back. And I was like, what? Excuse me, what? Um, and I said, just to clarify, we are releasing timber wolves. And I was like, those are not native to Colorado. Those are not native to the lower 50 states, or lower 48. And then it also was, you realize each year calves are produced and wolves love to hunt for fun. And they looked at me and they said, but I thought they were lineage from our dogs. And that, it just kept taking me back. And I was just like, what is not connecting here, you know? But I was like, here's the livelihood. There's nothing in place currently to do reparations or anything for these livestock producers. They're not allowed to protect their livestock if this bill is like introduced. And then also, if they do get reparations, are you going to pay the auction prices, or are you going to pay the prices that are sold in grocery stores? And they looked at me and they said, it's the same price. Why would we do anything different? And I seriously just realized I was not going to win that conversation. And then not even like 2 weeks after I left them with a business card. And I get a call, Meredith, you brought up some really good points here on Capitol Hill. And I did not know this about the ag industry. Can you please tell me more? And I'd love to learn. And then that just like really took me for a new different route, because I was like, you guys are making policies for so many ag producers and you don't know what they go through in their daily lives. You don't know what the struggles they're facing or how much they're going to lose this year because of a bill you introduced, or a different like proposition or things like that. And it really just changed my mind on Capitol Hill. The second time I went was for National Bison Association. And there we spoke a lot to USDA and a lot to different people that thought, so like the thing with bison right now is that they don't know if they should call it livestock or still a wild animal. And so many bison producers call them livestock because they raise them as livestock and they raise them as their livelihood. But you also have people that are wanting to release them on properties and just let them run for life, which both are okay, both can exist. But when it comes to laws and when it comes to different propositions that happen, they can't cross, you know, they have to be either one or the other. And that was a huge thing going to Capitol Hill with was, oh my God, bison have brucellosis. They're so horrible for the environment. Why would we? They should only belong in national parks. And I was like, oh my goodness. And even just our like Wyoming representatives or senators and things like that, it's always, well, we have native tribes that could benefit from bison, but we have the ones in Yellowstone that have brucellosis and are spreading it all over the state, you know? And just finding common ground was one of the best things to go to Capitol Hill about, because you can advocate so much for the industry we're in right now. And there's so much advocating that needs to be done. Even just writing a letter or doing their phone calls, and every state or every U.S. representative and U.S. senator has a calling hour. They have a coffee hour. They have something to where you can just make a phone call or even just write a letter in and say, you know what, I'm on this operation. Here's what I go through. And just explain what you do, because they don't know. They really don't know. I've become good friends with Senator Barrasso, who's our U.S. Senator for Wyoming, and then same with Representative Hageman. And Representative Hageman and I she spoke about how she brought a group of other representatives to Wyoming just to experience the West. Half of them had never stepped on a cattle ranch. Half of them have never seen mountains. And most of them have never seen a drought. They don't even know what we're talking about. And they were like, oh, why is it so brown here? And I was, she's like, well, it hasn't rained. Like, just doesn't, you know? Or why don't you guys have other trees other than pine? And we're like, they just don't grow. Or the altitude sickness or things like that. It's just so crazy. And then going to our state, like the state level, that one's a fun one, because in Wyoming, a lot of it is a lot of the funding that is from like our state house and state representatives and things like that. those go directly either to the university, ranchers, or different organizations within Wyoming. A little bit different in Colorado because there's so many other things they have to account for. And there isn't, they have multiple 4-year institutes. Wyoming's kind of nice because we have one 4-year institute, and it's University of Wyoming. So the funding we can ask for is a lot different than if you were in Colorado, but going and talking to those people at that level was great. So I got involved with a campus organization that kind of lets you go and see the politics side of things. And they brought a lot of people from different counties to come and talk to you about the different things that are impacting their counties alone. And then also how voting actually matters in the state because of the different things that are being introduced. And same with Colorado. I became friends with the Secretary of Agriculture there, and she is amazing. But also when you run into so many things with like how agriculture is getting pushed out there, it's different. And there's people that need to go and share those stories because you always hear the negativity on the news, and usually the negativity is coming from not knowing. And so teaching people that, even just like it, you don't have to stand out there with the sign. Most people don't. I personally do not. Will I make like a funny Instagram picture of me holding the sign just to get the word across? Yeah, absolutely. But it also like you have to find that in between. And even if it's just someone going to a farmer's market, and like let's say I'm selling my beef at a farmer's market and someone walks up to me, well, I heard all of these methane emissions that come from cattle and livestock, and gosh, you better keep your cows from farting. Like you hear that so often. But just that's your line of communication. Those are the people that are voting for you, are voting for agriculture. Make the difference there. It doesn't always have to be at a state capitol or at Capitol Hill. Go talk to people in your county. Go talk to people in your region. They're going to vote for you. They're going to vote for what matters to them. And let's make sure it's agriculture.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I couldn't have thought of a better way to start rounding out this podcast than just all of that, because it is so important that you don't have to be on Capitol Hill. You don't have to be at your state capitol. And also, so many people don't like know that, hey, you can call up your representative. And like, if they don't answer the phone, someone's going to answer the phone. And like, their entire job is to sit there and like listen to what the constituents are talking about and what their concerns are. That's the whole reason we have senators and representatives, is their job is to represent us on Capitol Hill. Like that is their whole purpose is to represent their constituents on a policymaking issues, all of these things on Capitol Hill, at state capitals, all of these things. You can call up your local, county, state, whatever representatives and have conversations with people, write letters, all of the things. It doesn't have to be this big ordeal of like, you're going to go spend a week in Washington, D.C. Right. And you're going to go sit down in meetings with USDA and Farm Bureau and like all of these other organizations, or you're going to go do something big and official. It can just be something as simple as that, or something as simple as advocating for agriculture with the inner city people that may not know. Because like you said, a large population, we have 98% of the population is voting for what 2% of the population does. And so it's going and reaching that 98, and that we need more people reaching that 98. Honestly, we need more people that are just going out there in their local communities and going out of their way to, hey, like reach out to your ag teachers and or reach out to like local kindergarten or teachers or stuff like that. People love when other professional business owners or things like that in the industry, in the counties, whatever, want to come in and read a book or share about what they do or like different things like that. I know one time I personally went and talked to our kindergarten class and read a book to them and then talked about animal agriculture in their science unit, because they were talking about cows and they were talking about all these things. And I just went and talked about it there. And there are so many opportunities if you just kind of put yourself out there and you just go searching for them. There will come a time when you don't have to search for them anymore and people are going to be knocking down your door. But just go be open to those opportunities and just push yourself out of your comfort zone. Meredith, I have so enjoyed our conversation. I would like to start rounding it out and ask you the one piece of advice that you have for the next generation of agriculture.
Oh gosh, I feel like I've shared it all. Just kidding. But piece of advice, just go out there. Don't be afraid. And just go be yourself, because being yourself in this industry will truly make a difference. And even if you feel like you're such like a minority in the industry and you're someone that's just starting out, you're still welcomed at the table. So don't ever lose hope, and don't ever lose that. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That is the perfect way to just kind of like take everything that we've talked about today and round it into one happy piece of advice. Thank you so much, Meredith, for coming on. And to all of the listeners out there, I will have all of Meredith's links linked down below. If you loved everything that she was talking about today, or have any questions or need any advice or anything like that, please go find her Instagram, all of her links, everything else down below in the show notes. And that will take you right to her, and you can just go blow up her DMs telling her how much you loved the podcast, or ask her any and all of the questions. So thank you to all of you listeners out there for another week on The Next Generation, and we will see y'all next time.